Hail, hail, the Celts are here. And what the hell do we care anyway, guys? We're getting set for a top of the table clash as the Hoops go away to Aberdeen. In the video today, we're going to do our best to try and predict the starting 11 that Brendan Rodgers is going to call upon to get the job done, to bring the 3 points back to Glasgow. And also that will kind of, set off the last portion of this sequence of fixtures that we've had leading up to that cup final, culminating with some Champions League action that we've been eyeing up since coming out of the last international window. After the Ross County game, there was so much rotation that really everything is up in the air right now for who could be called upon to be selected at Pittodrie to get the job done at any point in the video today. If you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and get into the comment section in this one and let me know what your hot takes are for the starting 11 for Aberdeen Celtic this midweek and Wednesday night. Yeah, let's just get stuck straight into this one, because coming out of the international break, the manager's comments himself even said as much, that during this period of fixtures, not just the ones that we've got on screen here, but all the way into the New Year calendar, the Ultra Marathon, we're going to be calling upon every member of the squad to play their part, to pull their weight, to help contribute to the victories, to the points, to the goals, and everything else in between. And I think from the first 3 matches already, we've certainly seen, especially with the Ross County game, how many changes have been made there, the overview of the squad management that Brendan's trying to deploy. And I think if we look at this as like a segment of 7, I definitely think Rodgers wants whatever the new best 11, we'll talk about that in the video today, ends up becoming. He's going to want them fit, firing and able to play on Tuesday against the Zagreb, and then going Sunday and into the final here. So, a good kind of turnaround. Sunday, Tuesday isn't too bad. And I really do think this is an important kind of overview to think about when trying to factor in any changes that might be made for the Aberdeen game for Hibs before coming into that real double header, which is real, like, I know one of them is a cup final, but both of them have to be treated as kind of cup final mentality, as it were. The 4-1 victory we got at Tynecastle after an international break is what I think everyone would recognise to be the best starting 11. Maybe Greg Taylor has still got a bit of a discussion point, a bit of a hot topic point there, with the likes of Bernardo, Forrest, Yang, Ida, Rowson all coming off the bench. We then had the Bruges game, where the guys from the bench is pretty much the same, but we also include Valley in there, and the starting 11 was identical. There was no changes there. Before coming to Ross County and seeing the changes aplenty from defence to midfield all the way into the forward areas as well. And really the performance that we got here against Ross County, like if we just won this game like kind of half typically, like 3-0 or 3-1 or something like that, and everyone was just kind of okay, I don't think there would have been any sort of disruption to like the game plan, to the natural order of the best 11 and all the rest of it. But like I spoke about in my breakdown for the Ross County game, Luke McKeown, of course, everyone thinks he's really put his name in the frame to be a starter. Bernardo's been knocking on the door for a little while. And when you add in Liam Scales and Adam Ida into this, there's now like a real spine that could be very feasibly competing to oust the incumbent best 11 players for, not just the Aberdeen game, but maybe when we get to Zagreb, when we get to the cup final as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Rodgers does manage the squad. And I think all that does start with the Aberdeen game. Now, this is the team that started against Ross County, and really, all things being equal, this team would beat Aberdeen. I don't think there would be any issues whatsoever with going up to Pittodrie and just keeping the starting 11 the exact same. Although I think we will see, of course, the return of Nicholas Kuhn into the starting 11. I feel like that was just an easy rest opportunity for him at home to Ross County, even though he's not an international player and doing all the travel and all the rest of it. We rely upon him so heavily that it was probably just a good opportunity to rest and pull him out of the team. And there was a similar situation maybe before the international window where we did see Kuhn miss a game or come off the bench or something. I forget what it is right now, but he has a guy that's had his minutes managed already, and I think we'll quite quickly see him return to the fray against Aberdeen. Keeping with the front line, with Daizen Maeda starting against Ross County and coming off so early, again, I think his position in the team is fairly nailed. But up front for me is one of the biggest question marks, because Adam Ida here, the iPad himself, looked so much more convincing of a forward than Kyogo has for so long for me. And it's not just that it's a different styles and a big guy and, a little guy and that kind of thing, but he actually was getting shots away. He really could have had a hat-trick against Ross County, and Kyogo, I don't think he's been that close to having such an impressive performance in a while. Now, granted, it is Ross County, but doing that against Aberdeen would be a real proof in the pudding, perhaps, of a striker that's better suited to being the starter, to being the best 11 player, as it were. And Adam Ida generally has been relied upon for away matches more than most, and I could very easily see Adam Ida starting this game, and I don't think anyone would be too disappointed by it. I think it would probably give Aberdeen a different problem, a different threat coming into this game, that they don't really know who is going to start in this one. And I think, like, with Pittodrie, it's not as big as Parkhead, of course. I don't think you quite need the full intensity of Kyogo. As long as you've got Dyson Maeda up here, we know Kuhn's get high energy for the press and for recovery and all that kind of stuff. So I think you could quite happily start Adam Idah 2 games in a row and try and get a good run of form out of him, because he's been really starved of some significant opportunities since returning to the club permanently. The manager does put that down to the lack of pre-season, but it feels like he's starting to shake that off a little bit. And let's say doing it against Ross County is one thing, but for Adam Idah and one or two of the other players we'll talk about in a second, doing against Aberdeen would really be staking a claim to start against the likes of Zagreb and Rangers in the cup final, etc. And I think Rodgers will give Idah that opportunity to really pull away from Kyogo as being the informed striker, the guy that's hitting the back of the net, the guy that's bringing other players into play as well, because Idah is doing pretty well at that. He's not phenomenal at it. His passing isn't that great, but he tries. He's open to it. He's aware of it. And Kyogo is like, again, we talk about it on the channel so often, but he's a selfish git sometimes, honestly. And especially in tight games against important opposition when it's 0-0, Kyogo so often makes the wrong decision, taking shots from stupid places, not playing people in for one-on-ones because they can't pass it back to him for him to shoot, which seems to be his motivation for a lot of build-up play. He'll give it to someone if he believes, oh, cool, well, you're all the way out there, you're not going to be shooting, I'll run here, maybe I'll get it back. Whereas Adam Idah, it feels like it's much more kind of for the team. And I know strikers need to be selfish, they need to be egomaniacs to an extent, goal hungry, want to get the headlines. But I think with Kyogo, it's borderline toxic. I've said that a few times, you know. But I think Adam Idah is going to start this one. And the front three here, like, we can get all sorts of goals. Adam Idah, as we've seen with his goal against Ross County, banging one in from the edge of the box. We can see him running channels very regularly as well. But having the service of cutbacks from Dyson, and either nice, when Kuhn cuts inside, he likes to float balls in, or when he gets to the byline, again, he's got such great delivery that it feels like Idah would be well served in this game. And against the sort of centre-backs that Aberdeen play, like the Rubiciches and whatever as well, where they want to, you know, bash you about and really get stuck into you, Idah's probably better equipped for that. But as we walk away from the forward line and we actually look at the midfield, this is where all the real big decisions, all the big headaches actually come in the squad, because we know McGregor's going to start. And again, similar to Dyson, he gets subbed off very early in the game. Good opportunity to rest and, you know, protect the captain, as it were, and keep him in good fettle, keep him in good shape for the upcoming matches, which we would need him in a lot more than we would when we're 5-0 up to Ross County. So great to see that McGregor doesn't need to play the 90 minutes, and we have other options of players that can come on and relief for him. I find it so hard, almost impossible, to imagine that Luke McKibben does not start this game. And a huge reason for that is quite similar to what I was saying about Adam Idah a moment ago, where doing it against Ross County is one thing, but if you can now do it against Aberdeen, you really do put yourself in the fray to maybe get that exposure, that, you know, opportunity to play against Zagreb, to maybe make an impact in the cup final. And with McKibben being like very well read or very well experienced within like the domestic game in Scotland, it was there for all to see against Ross County, I wouldn't be worried about playing him against Aberdeen. And I know their midfield is probably one of their stronger suits, but McKibben against Ross County, and we talked about it in the player stats, the breakdown at the end, he was everything in that game. He was the most active defensive player, he was the most active offensive player, his energy was great, his absolute motivation, desire to play other players in, to see the pass, to make ambitious plays. You know, it wasn't just playing safe for the most part, get himself into the box. He's always involved in goals and assists. His averages per minute at the moment are up there with Nicholas Kuhn, of course. And after such a convincing performance against Ross County, I can see him starting against Aberdeen. Now, last time he got a start was against Motherwell off the back of the Atalanta game. And again, he did fantastic in that match. He then started the following game at home to Dundee. And I think a lot of people thought that was a little bit of like, you know, he knows the enemy, as it were. He should do pretty well against them before being dropped against Leipzig. And then slowly, as you can see here, brought back into the lineup over the last match. So getting him to start 2 games in a row isn't unforeseeable, isn't you know, a huge stretch of the imagination at this point. But if you are going to start McKibben and you are going to start McGregor, then there's 3 guys that all want this spot. We've got O'Bernardo incumbent at the moment, Arne Engels, the record transfer, who maybe got a bit of a weekend off, as it were, and Rio Hatate, of course. Now, I think a lot of people would think that playing Hibs is the game where you maybe keep the rotation going a little bit again, and maybe we see a little bit of weekend against Ross County, midweek Aberdeen, weekend Hibs, midweek Zagreb, weekend Rangers. We might see some midweek to weekend selections, and I think that might happen in the fullback area. We'll talk about that in a minute. But with midfield, like, I think Hibs is probably the game where Rodgers plays the team that will play against Zagreb. I think against Aberdeen, he will very much play the McKewens and the Idas in the team that we've already spoke about because they're on form. They're in real audition mode at the moment and putting huge pressure on the players that have normally been expected to play in these matches. So I do think this Aberdeen game, coupled with the Ross County match, is a huge audition opportunity for Ida, McKeown, and then whoever else is going to be in this midfield right now. I cannot see it being Hatate, and I've said this before, but a midfield like this, it's the same reason I never seen Iwata getting into the Celtic lineup when McGregor and Hatate were so firmly nailed as they're all tiny, you know what I mean? Against Aberdeen, against Zagreb, maybe not Hibs, it's not a problem, but certainly against them in the final, this midfield just doesn't have the muscle in it to really command the centre ground. And yeah, technically, tactically, these guys are all really clever, really high energy, and I'm sure it'd actually be a really interesting midfield to watch play in some of these matches and see how it does. But I just don't see it. And I find it rather unlikely that Engels would come back into the same position that he has been playing. He did come on for McGregor against Ross County. So if he was to start, we might see a little bit more of the evolution tied into similar to what we've seen against Ross County and we've seen in some other matches in previous weeks where the midfield has dictated the game. The midfield has won the game with this type of shape of being a little bit more narrowing together with McGregor and his +1. And then one of them always has that option of springing into space and go on and supporting the forward area. I find it really hard to see Engels start against Aberdeen with how good Bernardo did. And I think Bernardo, or Paul O'Bernardo as we like to call him here, has been chapping at the door and he's not put a foot wrong in any of his opportunities. I think the Ross County game, he's absolutely job done, ticked the boxes to say, here's your next chance. Go and play against Aberdeen, do the same thing in this team, in this midfield. We'll put Kuhn on the pitch for you as well so you get more attacking threat. And, you know, last time against Aberdeen it was a draw. Can we go out and actually get the win this time? Can you make the difference to actually crash into the box, support us defensively, etc, etc. So I do think Bernardo is the favourite to start in the midfield here alongside McGregor, and I just cannot see McKeown getting dropped at this point. The defence, on the other hand, is, I don't know if it's more difficult than the midfield, but I think it's less obvious how we can maybe rationally and logically look at the squad management and then think about how the defence might shake out. Because with the midfield and the forwards, like I said, I think I could see the guys that are on form from the Ross County game get their second chance against Aberdeen, and then come Hibs, I think the manager will be laying out a best 11 that will play against Zagreb, will play against them in the cup final, and the subs will be the guys that, you know, keep the energy levels high, keep this team spirit going, as it were. And in midfield and up front, you know, it's a bit more of a delicate balancing act. Whereas with defence, it's a bit of a different animal altogether. We know Schmeichel's going to be in goals. We know Alistair Johnson, who again gets subbed off very early against Ross County, is going to be starting. But in terms of the whole midweek to weekend thing we might see, like I mentioned before, it could be the fullbacks, and I think Valley for Taylor is an easy swap out for Pittodrie. Slightly smaller pitch, he'll be inverted and maybe crowd the middle of the pitch a little bit more, and maybe just give us a little bit more of a, you know, a foothold in the centre of the pitch, because they do have some really good physical, technical players themselves, and I think Taylor could be preferred in this game against Aberdeen. You could then see Valley against Hibs, and then it's really anyone's guess for the following two matches there, because it does feel for Taylor and Valley, it is horses for courses, and, you know, like Taylor could start this game against Aberdeen, maybe even play against Hibs as well, but we might even see Valley play against Zagreb, you know, so it's still kind of hard to determine if it's like a full, you know, you'll play the midweeks and you'll play the weekend type situation, like we've seen with one or two other positions over the years. But I think Taylor does come back into this one alongside Alistair Johnson. Now, the centre-backs for me just has never been as competitive, ever. Echoing what I said in the breakdown about the Ross County game, like Harry Vickers, we've long agreed and it's been no argument, no contest that he's been the best centre-back, most well-rounded, coolest camist, the man mountain, nobody gets by him, doesn't put a foot wrong and all the rest of it. But it's been quite clear to see in the Bruges match the limitations he does have with passing. Like he will only pass to three men that are like very close to him. And he very rarely wants to get up the pitch. Like, he very rarely wants to take the ball at his feet and travel to the halfway line and then play the ball from there. He's very happy to take one or two touches and then give it to McGregor, give it to Johnson, give it to whoever he's playing with, give it, maybe spray it out to the left here for Taylor or Valley or something like that. But it is very one-dimensional. And it feels like Vickers after the Bruges thing, and you know, I don't think Ross County really had any of it, but it has shown the big man up to not be like the complete defender that I think a lot of Celtic fans were under the impression that he was or he is or whatever. Undoubtedly the best defender we have in terms of position, composure, nobody been able to beat him and all the rest of it. But against Aberdeen, against Ross County, Hibs, Rangers, Zagreb, all the rest of it, We need a defender that can do something different, and we really did see what Scales offers in the Ross County game. I'll echo what I said about McCown and Ida, that it is Ross County, but Scales has already proved that he's got multiple Champions League Man of the Matches. He's played for the last year and a half relentlessly with all sorts of different centre-back partners, and I think the big man has probably benefited from the little period of time he's had out of the squad over the last couple of weeks, because before, like, he was playing all the time regardless, and some of the flaws or some of the shortcomings he might have could massively be down to that kind of over-reliance that we've had from him, because against Ross County, we've seen all the best qualities of Scales where he's not shy. If he could put on the ball in this area here, he'll take it to the halfway line, maybe even beyond, and then try and play whatever passes on. Like we've seen for his assist for McKibben, Scales used to be a left-back, by trade, and he does have a decent range of passing. He maybe does become a bit of a deer in the headlights when it's high pressure, not many touches, got to do the right thing. He loves a clearance, he loves putting out for a throw-in to just play safe, and that's fine. And I think that's where Trusty has the edge on him with, but in the air, Scales is an absolute phenomenon at the moment. Nobody will beat him in the air defensively. And offensively, he's starting to give us goals from centre-backs, which we've not had to a decent level for a long, long time. So I think that between the three centre-backs, I've not even really mentioned Trusty because obviously didn't play at the weekend, but I think we all believe that Trusty would come back into this team. I cannot see Scales getting dropped, and I can't see Carter Vickers getting dropped. It's a really odd one. Now, if Scales has just sat out a couple of matches concurrently, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if we seen that from Austin Trusty now for the next 2 or 3 matches. Scales has won the shirt. And again, I was saying this on the breakdown, but you need to remember, football players get better. Scales is really developing and has really developed massively over the last year or so. And it's really hard to imagine that Scales would be kept in the team. Maybe Vickers would be dropped for Trusty. Again, a lot of people thought that Vickers might not play against Ross County because his minutes do get managed, they do get covered. I don't think you would do this kind of thing against Aberdeen, but I can certainly see this happening against Hibs. So I think it might be just the wrong match to maybe take Vickers out the firing line in terms of the rest and the minute management and all the rest of it. And I think it would be super harsh on Scales. An assist and a goal. The guy has been brilliant. He's never, ever played bad for me, Scales. He's not been perfect, but I think it would be well harsh to take him out of the team for this Aberdeen game. I think against Hibs, you could then maybe see Trusty and Scales starting. And then we go back to Champions League and let's see who the fittest, survival of the fittest kind of thing. Let's see who the manager selects ultimately. So this is the starting 11 that I predict is going to start at Pittodrie to play Aberdeen. And I think if we start this game with this type of team, we can start really, really fast. We've seen that a number of times this season, and we like to score goals in the opening phases of the first half, really control the game state, and then kick on from there. But Aberdeen will be aware of that. Last time the sides met, we took a rather quick 2-goal advantage over them. And although they did come back to 2 each, we could have done a little bit better in the second half and all the rest of it. They will see that as the big mistake they made in that game, was letting us get the first goal, gain control of the match, and them having to play catch up. With them being at home, the crowd really behind them, you can imagine it already, under the floodlights, midweek, top of the table clash, trying to keep distance on 3rd and 4th place and all the rest of it that Aberdeen are trying to do. So I think the opening periods of this game is going to be where, I don't want to say where the match is won and lost, because for me the game is always won in the second half. It's a bit of a trope, as it were, at this point on the channel. But even looking at the team that started against Aberdeen last time, it's not too dissimilar to the team that we've got here. Vickers was injured at this point. I think Taylor was injured at this point, and we see McCowan and Bernardo come off the bench with Ida as well, of course. So it's really just that kind of little core of changes, the foreign players that could come in, because Hatate has been somewhat hot and cold, somewhat off it. I don't think we've really had vintage Dyson outside of the Aberdeen semi-final where he got the hat-trick, of course. And this was probably Kyogo's best game of the season, that 2-2 draw by Aberdeen, getting in a goal and an assist for the wee man. So maybe he comes back in because he's got them spooked a little bit. Maybe that could happen, and then we see Ida start then against Hibs, and there's that kind of midweek weekend rotation thing that we mentioned. But I think if we do go out and get the early goal like we're expected to, or the first goal certainly, Aberdeen are not going to make it easy for us. Like I say, at Pittodrie, their goalkeeper's half decent for the league. Their defence is pretty resolute, quite solid in that regard. So I'm not sure it's going to be that high scoring a game. It might even be another draw, by the way. It might be quite nip and tuck, but if we start with this team, honestly, I don't see how Kuhn doesn't get involved in the action. I don't see how Ida doesn't either. And then the midfield and the fullbacks, especially then with Daizen Maeda coming into the equation, from open play, we should be getting another goal or two. And if Big Scales does start, I would fancy me get another one from a set piece. So I think Celtic will get 3 goals in the team here at least. And could we keep a clean sheet against Aberdeen? I think we could. We're a bit of a clean sheet machine this season. But Away to Aberdeen isn't one of those games where you think if you don't get a clean sheet, it's a real problem or a disaster or anything like that. So I'm gonna go with Celtic to win this 3-1, but I really do hope it's 2-0. A little bit more controlled, get the clean sheet, use the bench well. Maybe it's 1-0, it's quite tight, and then the bench needs to get the second goal and really put us over the top. But even as I'm saying that, we've not had any games, well, except for the Aberdeen game, of course, where it's been that nip and tuck, it's been that tight, you know. So it's actually quite a hard game to forecast. I'll be really interested to see what your score predictions are down in the comment section. I think 3-1, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. 3-1 to the Hoops. Let me know your score predictions, your hot takes for the game in the comment section down below. Always excited to catch the comment sections on these videos, of course. On screen now, some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more content like this. Stay out of trouble, hail, hail, and moan the Hoops.